I do believe webinars are very powerful. On average, people that show up on the webinar, 25-30% will usually buy. You're going to be able to put together such a valuable webinar that you can invite a lot of people to go to. All right, so we have Ebrahim Turner here with us. And Ebrahim is running the Conscious Entrepreneur program. And basically, we're going to go ahead and look at a launch strategy. In general, how we create a launch strategy for programs, high-ticket programs. Do you have any specific questions when it comes to like a launch?
Yeah, just like where do you start? What's like the journey? How long should it be for? What kind of content should you use?
Are we launching an entire new program? Are we launching one specific offer? Are we launching a low ticket, mid ticket, high ticket?
It's a new high ticket offer.
Okay, so the program itself consists of a community, coaching calls. Do you have a video library? Is it a mastermind? So if you can introduce a little bit about the program structure.
It's actually one-to-one program with a video library.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's one-to-one. So community will come later, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I usually use Jeff Walker's launch strategy, and the way Jeff Walker thinks about it and teaches the launches and what we've been doing for a lot of webinar launches or email launches, we always put the launch date as the main event, right? So we have the launch date right here. This can be a webinar. This can be an open card email. This can be when the VSL goes live. This can be a real life event. This is always the main event that we're talking about. Now, preceding the event, we always have the invite sequence. Usually we do a 7 to 10 day invite sequence to the event, to the launch. This is specific to webinars, but I want you to think of it holistically. So let's say that there is one date when you're launching the program. You have your narrative about why that program is good, what problem it's solving. So before that, you will want to begin the whole launch process. What you're going to do, what Jeff Walker teaches and what we've been using is the pre-launch. In the pre-launch, basically the PPL that we call it, is you ask your audience what is the biggest struggle. So you create a conversation with them and you interact with them in your content. I mean, obviously you can do this through YouTube videos, you can do these Instagram stories, you can do these through emails. And the point of the PPL is to understand their pain points. And to understand the pain points is basically you're asking what was your biggest struggle, XYZ, what was the turning point in your life, or you explain or you tell a story, what was the turning point in your life, and ask them to share their own in comments on Instagram, question and answer forms. Basically the PPL is where you become a little bit vulnerable and you make them vulnerable. Now, after the PPL process, basically they're starting to listen. But what's very, very important in the case of a webinar, what we do in the PPL, we send out forms and emails. So basically asking them what's the biggest struggle with XYZ, and then they would fill out the form, and we literally have a spreadsheet full of pain points or objections. So what happens next after the PPL is the invite sequence or the pre-launch sequence. This can go to 7 to 10 days in case of a webinar, minimum 3 days. In case of a smaller ticket launch, it's 3 to 5 days. The larger the ticket size, the longer the pre-launch sequence is. Now in the pre-launch sequence, what you're doing, and I will be showing you an entire SOP on how to set up these communications in each day. Basically, what you're doing, you always want to show the opportunity. What is it that you're about to give them? Once you show the opportunity, you always want to establish your position. Why are you the person to establish? Why are you the person to listen to? After you establish your position, what I will want you to do is teach them something from your actual program, something that they will receive so they actually get the education, or you gain trust and psychologically they understand that what they're going to go through. The next one is you handle objections. And basically when you handle objections, these are the points that you're using from the PPL. So basically this is the real deal in the invite sequence. Basically you're using all the pain points and objections that you've been collecting previous to the pre-launch, because that means that you're directly going to be targeting your audience pain points and objections, so they know that whatever you have to offer is something that they need. Why? Because basically the sale happens before the event, right? At the event, they need to be ready to open up their wallets. At the event, they need to be ready to sign up. And the best way to do that, if they already do not have objections, we need to strip all those objections away from them. And basically they will be like in that high state when they go to your event, whether it's the open card in the email, whether it's the webinar, whether it's the click the link now and be ready and they go through the funnel. There are no objections because preceding to the event, we've been handling those objections. Now, if you set up a pre-launch campaign, basically after handling the objections, you always want to foreshadow what's coming up tomorrow. So for example, if it's an email series, you want to make sure that handle objections, basically imposter syndrome, for example, that's the objection that you're handling. Then you're telling them that in tomorrow, we're going to talk about XYZ, the next objection. Why? Because you will not have everyone watch every single day. And you want to make sure if they're watching that day, you might not be hitting the proper objection for that person. So you're foreshadowing the next day's objection in order to make sure that they're going to be there, right? Now, the next day, what you're doing, you always have a call to action. After the foreshadowing, for call to action, you either sign them up, you either make sure that put the date in the calendar, you tell them that, hey, make sure to watch my email VSL event on Sunday, and so on. The next day, what you're going to start with is you're actually going to go ahead and summarize what you talked about yesterday. So as yesterday, we talked about imposter syndrome. Why? Because today, again, not everybody will be watching. So if they did not watch yesterday or they did not open the email yesterday, you still tell them what the topic was. So they actually have like, oh, I missed it. They reach out. So that you actually draw them in. The same day, that day, so you basically, day 2, you told them what you talked about yesterday. Again, you establish yourself, you show the opportunity, you teach, you handle the next objection. And then you foreshadow the third day's objection. And this is how you roll it all the way until the event. So basically on one day, on average, you're actually handling or showing them 3 separate objections before leading up to the webinar or the launch event. And again, this communication is just, it works. So we talked about PPL. Basically, that's when you receive information and objections. Pre-launch, 3 to 5 days if it's a low mid ticket, 7 to 10 days, even 2-3 weeks if it's a high ticket, and you want to make sure that you need proper objection handling. When the event starts, again, on the event, you want to make sure to establish your position. You want to make sure that you tell them what the main problem is. You show them testimonials, and basically you set the whole event and the launch itself up as a webinar or as a mini VSL, where you're talking about your position, your testimonials, the problem, you're handling the objections, and basically you're hyping them up all the way to be ready to open up their wallets. Now, once the launch happened, you usually want to put some kind of scarcity, mental scarcity or financial scarcity on them. So that's when we start the sales process. Usually you will have a opening, deal for the first week, first 2 weeks this month, and you want to make sure that after the launch itself, you're communicating that they have limited time to sign up in the first day, limited time to sign up for until the end of month. The price is going up. I think you know most of it, but basically this is how a launch strategy is built up. Let's look at a big Hollywood movie. What happens is like there's a premiere day, right? Before the premiere day, the actors are going on tours. All they're doing are talking about what's coming up. They're talking about this. They're showing little nuggets of value from the movie. They're actually establishing themselves. Like individual actors will have their own hype strategies just to have the movie hyped by those hyped actors. It's the same thing that you're doing as an individual in your program. And then when the premiere opens, what they do is like they actually have the sales period of like, oh, it's the big hit movie, grows this much, this happened, that happened, 1 million people watched it in the first day. So they're actually making you go to the event, even though it already happened. So that's how all launches actually are set up. And this is what Jeff Walker is pretty much teaching as well. And this is what we've been doing for our clients and with our programs as well. Very, very successful.
So is there anything you do in terms of like content outside of email?
Yeah, so depending on what your main content platform is, if it's Instagram for you, what I've done, for example, for my launches, my personal launches as a personal brand, literally I've been creating reels very strictly, not just stories, but reels as well, 7 to 10 days before the launch. And the same thing, it's basically one of those reels will show the opportunity, teach a little bit, handle objections, talk about how great you are or your service or your program is, why it will help them, and it will foreshadow what else you will be introducing them, and then a call to action. And then you can always reshare that reel in the story flow. So if you have an educational reel, then you can create a story a lot easier because you have a reel that actually teaches one specific point. Then in the stories, you can create 3 like titles or 3 stories, getting them ready what the reel will be about. So you can make a story out of the reel outside of the reel. Does that make sense? And then basically this is how 1 reel per day will also allow you to create an entire day full of stories. Same with TikTok if you're posting for TikTok. Same for Twitter, basically if you're doing threads and attaching those reels as well. So yeah,
Awesome, man.
Any other questions or specific to you?
What would you recommend for me to launch to be? Like what? Like a webinar VSL? Like what would you actually recommend?
I do believe webinars are very powerful. Like with your current follower base and network that you have, you're going to be able to put together such a valuable webinar that you can invite a lot of people to go to. And then on average, people that sign up for a webinar, maybe 25-30% will actually show up. And then people that show up on the webinar, 25-30% will usually buy either on the spot if you have a button, or they will book a call if you're selling high ticket and require a sales call. Webinar is cool. VSL can work for if you have a big budget on Facebook or ads, or if you have a bigger follower base, because then they're just ready to watch it. But a webinar has that live essence to it, that it's you gonna be there, they're gonna be able to ask questions, and you always want to have some kind of urgency for them to be on the webinar. Whether it's like they get something, you're going to reveal something that only those people that go live will receive. And then obviously if you have big email list, an email launch, usually I find it best to launch smaller and mid-ticket items on email and get them on a call for higher ticket. I'm looking forward to seeing your launch and actually working on it in the next time we have planned together.
Thank you, bro. This was super helpful. Thank you, bro.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Awesome. Thank you guys for watching. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment. If you find this video helpful, then hit the subscribe button, like, and share with a friend that's about to launch. Let's go.